Question. Have you ever hesitated before asking for a gift and you couldn't quite explain why? Now, you know your mission matters, you know funding is needed, and yet something in you still pulls you back. What if the issue isn't strategy? What if it's your money story? Today, we're going to talk about how your personal relationship with money is quietly shaping how you show up in fundraising. That is our focus on this episode. Let's huddle up. If you're leading a nonprofit, your mission is big, but your funding doesn't always match it. And if fundraising is falling on your shoulders without a clear path to major gifts, that gap doesn't close on its own. That's why I want to invite you to a free live training that I'm hosting Thursday, April 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern, called Big Mission, Bigger Gifts. I'm going to walk you through a clear relationship based approach to raising major gifts without pressure or without a development team. So if your mission needs bigger funding, don't wait on this. Register today by clicking the link below or visit thefundcoach.com. Hope to see you there. Hey, welcome to another episode of Huddle Up with Mark, the Fund Coach. I'm Mark Duncan. Yes, I am pushing another button. But this time, this episode is going to be all about probably the biggest obstacle that I see when I'm working with people is around their money story. Now, I am not a psychologist, so let's make that clear up front. What I do know is that when it comes to asking for money, our own relationship is what drives that process if we aren't aware of it. Now, I'm not here to fix your relationship with money. That is, again, I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I do know that it is an obstacle that it exists. And so today we're going to dive into this and talk about it. So, what is your money story? Let's start there. Your money story is exactly what you have learned about money, especially growing up, what you believe about wealth, what you believe about scarcity, what you feel when money's involved in any decision that you have to make, whether that is personal or professional. And usually this money story is shaped by family conversations or silence, right? Because there are times when families just won't talk about money. And so that's a big part of it. Financial stress or stability, right? If there is any financial issues that you are dealing with now or have seen throughout your life, that shapes your money story. What's your cultural message around wealth? Is wealth in your eyes perceived as something that is only for the few? Is it perceived as something not good or something that is difficult to achieve or perhaps undeserving? Or any personal experience that you've had with money? Your money story, it's not just what you think about money. Most importantly, it's what you feel about money. And that, regardless of how much you care about your mission, how much you know your mission deserves significant gifts from high capacity individuals. If you aren't aware of this, and that's the key, If you're not aware of this, it can sabotage your fundraising. So let's talk about how it shows up, how your money story shows up. If money felt like it was scarce growing up, you may come in asking somebody you know has the capacity to give in a significant way. The data shows you that they're giving history, not just to your organization, but just generally speaking, shows you that. The way they're leaning in and connecting with you shows you that. But if you've got a story that is around scarcity, or if you felt that growing up, then you're likely going to under ask. You're definitely going to do that. And you may feel some sense of guilt around asking for a major gift or a transformational gift for whatever that reason may be, but it will be centered around that scarcity issue. If wealth felt like something other, I kind of mentioned this before, that feel distant, you may feel intimidated by major donors. You may feel intimidated by these people who have capacity. And so when you feel intimidated, you tend to shrink, right? We shrink in how we show up, we shrink in conversation. That's going to impact how you talk about your mission because you're too concerned about the intimidation that you've created and how you don't feel worthy of having that kind of conversation with them. These are real things that happen. And I will tell you from experience, early on in my career, this was something I had to overcome in a significant way, especially when I was in higher education and the gifts that I was soliciting were pretty significant and the people that I was interacting with had capacity. And that was at a time in my life when I was much younger. And so, at a very young family, trying to figure it all out myself financially. And at the same time, I had this responsibility. And so this is a real challenge that many nonprofit leaders face. If money conversations were uncomfortable growing up, you may avoid donor meetings just because of that. And you may not be realizing that that's why. There may be other reasons that you're creating to not have those donor meetings. You're too busy. Something came up. There's something more pressing that you need to be focused on. So that's going to have to wait. When at the core, there's this story that is what's keeping you from doing this. And so if you have a difficult time having money conversations, then it's not going to be comfortable when you're meeting with donors. You may overtalk instead of asking clearly. You may go around. This is why when I talk with my clients and people who work with me, I talk about being specific. You have to ask for what you want. If you can't do that, then there's something underlying, just connected to your money story, that will make you do these kinds of things that you will defer instead of leading and leaning in to make sure you make those asks. And you don't leave your money story at home. It's impossible to do that. You bring it with you. But what you have to do is you have to be aware of it. Just being aware of it. Yes, it is your forever companion. It really is. But being aware of that companion is more than half the battle. Because once you recognize your story and what it is and what those triggers are, you'll understand that it does not apply to the person sitting across from you. That's your story. This is why this matters way more than strategy. Strategy's easy to put on paper. Strategy's easy to talk about amongst your staff and your board. But when it comes to implementing this and actually getting in front of a person and building that relationship and knowing when to ask, because sometimes we prolong the relationship building aspect of this and we're not paying attention to the timing of when to ask. And you know when to ask when that person has no more questions for you and you have nothing more to share with them about what you're soliciting them for. You're done talking. They're done asking. You're done sharing. It's time to pivot. But we have a tendency to want to keep sharing, keep talking, and taking what probably could be accomplished in 3, 4, maybe 5 meetings and stretching it out to 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 interactions with them. So be aware of your story. Now, you can have, right, the right list, the right strategy, the right talking points, but you still hesitate. You soften the ask. And what I mean by that is instead of asking directly for that $100,000 gift that you know this person has the capacity to give and they're ready to be asked for that, because that number may feel so big to you that you won't say it. And you may just ask them to consider making a sizable gift. Say the number. Say the number. If there's anything you take from this episode, it's that. Say the number. Because when you hesitate, you soften the ask, and you avoid the moment, this is where you're leaving money on the table. This is the sabotage that I'm talking about. So your strategy might be sound. You might have everything that you need to be able to proceed, but your story and how unaware you may be of that will determine how you act in that moment. So you've got to bring awareness to this and you've got to do it without shame. You see, your money story started before you even knew it was being shaped. It started in that very first conversation that you overheard between your parents. It started when your parents started to talk with you about an allowance. It started when you asked your parents to pay for something that they had to tell you they couldn't because they couldn't afford it or it wasn't possible. And then you hear things like money doesn't grow on trees, and all of these things shape our relationship with money. It isn't your fault. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone has a money story. And just about everyone has a very similar money story. Nothing to be ashamed of. This is normal. This does not mean that you're not capable, because you are. You wouldn't be the one running your organization if you weren't capable. You wouldn't be the person that your board trusted to lead if you weren't capable of doing this. So Think about that. Reflect on that for a moment and ask yourself these questions. What did I learn about money growing up? What do I believe about wealthy people? And I would encourage you to write these things down. And how do I feel when I talk about large amounts of money? What are the feelings that come up? Sit with those questions. I'm going to ask them again. What did I learn about money growing up? What do I believe about wealthy people? And how do I feel when I talk about large sums of money? I want you to write those questions down. And if you have to pause the recording to reflect on it, that's fine. If you wait till after you listen to the full episode, that's fine too. But you cannot change what you're not aware of. And the awareness of this is more than half the battle. You have to own it and not be ashamed of having this story. So, how do we sort of rewrite the narrative? How do we rewrite the things that we tell ourselves when we're thinking about or getting ready to solicit? We may be saying, well, I'm asking for too much. Instead of thinking that, think I'm inviting someone into meaningful impact. I'm inviting someone to make a difference. I'm presenting someone with the opportunity to change lives. See, when you shift from you and your story to being a conduit between your mission and, more importantly, the people served by it and the people that you are soliciting who are ready and waiting and willing to give if you ask them. It isn't often, and it's very rare, that someone offers you $100,000 or $200,000 or $500,000 or $1 million without a relationship and, more importantly, without a direct ask. So if you hope that a big donor comes along and writes you a big check, you will be hoping for quite some time. But when you lean in, that's when the big gifts come. And when you shift your mindset to thinking that you're asking for too much to that you're presenting them with an opportunity to make a difference, that will help you. Instead of thinking that they have the power, think about the fact that you're both bringing something very valuable to the table, your leadership and their capacity. What a powerful combination. Think about that. Your leadership, your expertise in the work that you're doing to lead your organization, to have the impact on the lives of the people that you're serving, and their capacity to next level that. Whew, that's amazing stuff. That is amazing stuff. So think about that. And instead of this feels uncomfortable, try saying to yourself, this is a new skill that I'm growing into. Give yourself some grace. You're a human being just like they are. And you wake up in the morning just like they do. And you pour your coffee or your tea or your juice or whatever it is that you drink in the morning just like they do. And you have worries, stresses, and concerns just like they do. You see, just because someone is wealthy doesn't mean that they walk around worry and stress free. It's just a little different. They're human just like you. And you cannot erase your money story. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. It is with you, and it has made you who you are today. Now you're just trying to reshape it. And you start that by being aware and separating, once you become aware, separating that from the person sitting across from you. So here's a simple step that I want you to take as we wrap up. Before your next donor meeting, notice what comes up when you're thinking about asking. Just be aware of it. Name it. Okay. Name the belief that is behind it and replace it with something that is more grounded in truth. I'm not asking you to trick yourself or lie to yourself. I want you to be aware of the feelings that it conjures up. But then I want you to ground yourself in the truth. And the truth is that the person sitting in front of you does not share your money story, does not share your fear, does not share your discomfort. Everybody has their own story, but that person who could give your organization a significant amount of money doesn't have the same story that you have. So be aware of that. I hope this has been helpful to you. This is a very challenging, gut wrenching thing to focus on. And it's not something that's talked about often in the fundraising space. I've always believed that fundraising, that there's an art and a science to it. The science is all the stuff that I teach when I talk about my relationship fundraising method and all of those things. But the art is the things that are nuanced about you, about your organization, and about your money story. And that's part of this beautiful combination that makes fundraising so amazing. And as always, this fundraising thing, it's not about the dollars. It's not about your money story. It's about what the dollars do for the people that you serve. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll see you next time.